to Watercolor by Scarlett. Today we're talking about hard edges. So I have done this little quick painting for you guys. There's nothing really specific about it. I didn't have any thoughts when I was painting it, so I'm sure we could find something interesting in it. But I wanted to show you the hard edges and how easy it is to create interesting effects using layers. What I've done is picked up some paint and put down a wash. Okay, we'll just call that a wash. Now, because it's just one layer of paint, it becomes a wash. The moment I add another layer on top, it becomes a glaze. So each of these is glazes, and it's just like this. I just put down a bunch. You can do this in any style you want. Let's say you want to do a fish and you wanted to do the scales on the fish. It's the same concept. Or you're doing bricks on a building, same concept. So here I have put down the different colors. So we've got the lighter pink, the purple, the blue, and again lighter pink, purple, purple again, blue, blue again, lighter pink, which is in this case dark because there's lots of layers on top, blue on top of that, and then purple on top of that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers in this little area where they're layered one on top of each other. Now if I wanted to get this layered effect, but I didn't want to wait for it to dry, it's not really gonna work. It's gonna work differently. It's gonna look different. So let's see what happens when I take some red. And now this particular mark is almost dry. It's mostly dry here, a little bit wet there, and I'm gonna drop something in the middle. I'm going to get more of a soft edge. It's going to gently move out into the color that's underneath because the color underneath is still wet. Up here it's much more wet, so it's gonna move a lot. Okay, now if I was to do it like here, this is going to be wet because the body of my brush was really wet, so I actually added water before I put the paint on. Let's get like a drier brush, lift some paint, come back. Okay, so the paint is in the end and the whole brush is wet, so it's moving around, but it's only going where the water is. Now, if I let this dry and then come back, I will have something a little more like this. So now, if I come back and I add some color, this is a new glaze, a new layer on top. And what happens, this is one of the magical parts about watercolors, every time I do something like this, it will create its own edge. So every time I do something like this, it will form its own edge around the outside. And you can see that here, here. Sometimes I've put two colors together and the colors, they were both wet, or the one underneath was wet, like in this case. And so the colors blended beautifully. But in other cases, like here, we've got a solid or a crisp edge. Here is a great example. There's a hard edge all the way around. But here we have two colors and they were both wet at the same time. The two colors melded together and blurred. Same thing which is happening over here. See, they're all mixing. Now, on this spot, with the paint behind it being dry, it's not going to mix into the blue. So this will create a perfect hard edge, whereas these guys are going to just create soft edges. So we're going to talk about soft edges later, and I'm going to actually do a tutorial and a painting that will go into more details where I really show what it is and how it works and all the different ways to get soft edges. But hard edges is something that's really fun to do. So when you create a background, you could create whatever you want, and then you come back and you layer on the second layer. And if you know that by layering the second layer, you're going to end up with these sharp edges, these hard edges, you can plan for that. You can think about it beforehand, and you can create distance or texture or interest, just basic interest in your piece because it's got so much going on. So here, the background, these colors are all kind of mixed together, but if I come back and add some more in, see how it pushes that apart. And again, when this dries, it will look different. So this is one of the fun things about working on a piece for a long time. A lot of painters, watercolor painters, like to paint really quickly, and they think if you work more than 5 minutes on a piece, it's too much, it's overworked, it's silly. Well, I disagree. I think there is a place for fast and there's a place for slow. And when you're working like this, where you really want to get these hard edges, the only way you're going to get them like this is if you let each layer dry one after another before you put on the next thing. So if you want to paint really quick and you have a hard time putting it to the side and waiting for it to dry, I recommend maybe painting 2 paintings at once. So you're able to take this to the side and do some work over here, work in different areas of your painting, and then if you find that you need the whole painting to dry, put it to the side, come back to the other painting and continue working that way. That way you don't lose your flow, but you're giving your paper time to dry so that you can come back with your next layers. Now glazing would be another option. Glazing would be where I would unify the entire thing by going over it with one big color, one straight wash, and because it's going on top of paint, we call it glazing, like I said in the beginning. So if I was to glaze this, it would bring it all together. But that's an entirely new tutorial. We're going to talk about glazing later on. Thanks for watching. I'm Scarlett, and I will see you tomorrow. Toodaloo!